During the morning, we are pleased to be joined by members of Congress talking about issues of the day, and joining us from the Judiciary Committee on the House side, Steve Cohen, Democrat from Tennessee. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Give us your legal perspective on the events happening on the Senate side today.
Well, this is a Senate confirmation of a Supreme Court nominee, and it brings together the two biggest issues in American politics: the Me Too movement and the issue of does the truth matter anymore with Donald Trump as president. And the issues are here: women claiming assault by a nominee, even though in the past, as clerics have been accused and convicted, and Bill Cosby and others. And the issue is, do you want to get to the truth? And of course, Mr. Judge, who is the third witness to the event with Dr. Blasey Ford, will not be there because he has not been asked to testify, and others who could support the testimony of Dr. Blasey Ford have not been asked to testify. So it's a question of, can you handle the truth, as Jack Nicholson said in that classic movie scene.
Representative Cohen, about the use of an outside person to offer questions to these potential witnesses, what do you think about employing that, particularly as the Senate Republicans have decided to do so?
I think it shows the fact that the Senate Republicans know how despicable it appears, the demographics of the Senate, with 10 men on the Republican side to question a woman. And that they don't have, not only does it look bad, but that they realize they don't have the ability to ask the questions in a proper fashion that would go down inconsistent with gentlemanly behavior, senatorial behavior, and the Republican base. There's a distinction there.
Representative, you have a legal background. When it comes to the testimony that we're going to hear from both Judge Kavanaugh and Professor Ford, in terms of evidence, do you see this in the case where evidence has to be provided in some way, shape, or form, particularly as, you know, this moves on to a potential confirmation for Judge Kavanaugh?
Well, as far as the fact, it's going to be a he said, she said, because Kavanaugh is going to deny, as he's denied everything short of ever drinking, and he's going to deny it. Dr. Blasey Ford is going to lay out what happened, and the fact is she has taken a lie detector test. The FBI, former FBI agent who administered that test, should be questioned as far as the results of that test. That's evidentiary. So should the therapist who she went to in 2012 to see what she divulged and what her response was and why it came up. And so should others who she has given affidavits from, who have confirmed that she related to them in times when Judge Kavanaugh was not up for nomination and a public figure, that she divulged these reminiscences and memories and why she did it.
If you were in the position to do so, what questions would you pose to Professor Ford?
I think I would just let her tell her story, and I would let her relate whether or not she ever saw Kavanaugh after that, if he said anything to her, if she saw Judge afterwards, if he said anything to her, and let her express to the American public why she didn't reveal it publicly for this many years, which is, and I think she will, and it'll be an interesting aperture into the Me Too movement and women who've suffered sexual abuse, assault, and why it takes so long for them to come forward and to tell their story.
Same question, what would you pose to Judge Kavanaugh?
Oh, there would be so many questions about his inconsistencies in testimony, about his memory, about him drinking to excess, and how often he did it, and how often his claims, you know, his roommate at Yale said that he drank to excess even at the times when people drank a lot as freshmen in college, and how he was aggressive when he got drunk. And if he ever had treatment for his drinking problems, if he still has drinking problems, and what were some of the evidences of his roommate's testimony or in an affidavit that he was aggressive and belligerent as a drunk.
It's a committee hearing, not a legal hearing, but in this case, because of your legal background, does Judge Kavanaugh, to you, get a presumption of innocence, and does Professor Ford need to present a burden of proof?
No, it's not criminal case, and so you don't really have, not even a civil case per se. It's a confirmation, it's a job application. He's applying for the job. He's been nominated, and the Senate is supposed to confirm or not confirm the president's nomination. And in the federal government, and I know lie detector tests aren't introducible in evidence, but most or many federal employees, I say many federal employees, have to take a lie detector test, a polygraph test, to get employment. It seems like for the highest court in the land, when there's an issue of this nature, that you would ask Judge Kavanaugh to take a lie detector polygraph test to try to ascertain a better degree of proof as who was telling the truth.
Another topic to that of the Deputy Attorney General expected possibly to meet with the president today, and the president saying that even as of yesterday he would prefer Rod Rosenstein to keep his job. What do you think about those statements, and what do you think about particularly the current status of the Deputy AG?
I think Rod Rosenstein is a man of rectitude, a man who has done a good job and who should remain at his job. I don't expect that he'll make it to the Thanksgiving. I suspect he will be fired. He stands in the way of President Trump having control of the Mueller investigation. And if the Mueller investigation continues and brings out all the facts concerning his involvement financially with Russian oligarchs and possibly other incriminating evidence that expose him to blackmail by the Russian government and interference with our elections, and he and his son and son-in-law's possible involvement therein, which I think is going to be produced, his administration would go down in history as the most corrupt and illicit administration ever in the history of our country. It'll be the biggest con job, as he likes to call this investigation, in the history probably of the world. And the only way to stop that is to get rid of Rosenstein and put somebody in who will stop Mueller.
If that firing does take place, what recourse do you and other Democrats have on Capitol Hill?
Well, hopefully we'll have the majority come January, but during the lame duck we'll have a crazy period when they will do probably a shredding of evidence and destroying of evidence and doing all they can in a most nefarious manner to keep the truth and the evidences produced by the Mueller investigation, the special counsel, from the American public. When we take office and take the majority, which we must do to protect democracy, we'll have hearings, and we'll call a lot of the same people that Mr. Mueller has called to testify and bring to light the misdeeds that have gone on during this election in 2016 and have gone on since in trying to obstruct justice.
As far as legislation, there was talk about you and other, with some Democrats at least, about this idea of legislation protecting Robert Mueller. Where does that exist, and do you have a personal role in crafting some of that?
Well, when John Conyers left the Congress last November, I took over a bill he had with Representative Walter Jones of North Carolina, and I brought it up. It was a bill to protect Mr. Mueller and to say that there were certain standards that would have to apply for him to be terminated, that it would have to be for cause, and the court would have the right to oversee that firing and determine whether it was for cause and give Mr. Mueller that right to go to court. We brought a discharge bill to have it heard because we had no chance of having it heard in the Judiciary Committee, which has not done anything at all looking into the election or any of the Emoluments Clause violations or other violations that we know have taken place. And we got 180 people to sign, but you need a majority of the House. We didn't get any Republicans. Now, Mr. Walter Jones yesterday told me he signed the petition, so we might have 181 now and one Republican. But the Republicans have been afraid to act as an independent branch of government, a check and balance on the executive. And this presidency that doesn't believe in the truth and doesn't believe in the constraints of the Constitution has been able to basically do whatever it wants without a response from the House side. Now, the Senate has acted, and they have a more or less independent Intelligence Committee, and the Judiciary Committee has done a little bit. But in the House, we've had an Intelligence Committee that has been basically an arm of Trump trying to get evidence to hand over to them to make it easier for them to stop the investigation or to defend themselves in the investigation, and a Judiciary Committee that has done nothing.
Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat from Tennessee, a member of the Judiciary Committee, joining us to talk about issues concerning the Kavanaugh hearing and the Deputy Attorney General. Representative, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.